So would you all join me in welcoming the set and sound designer for the Tilco Strike and a longtime fourth liner, Esther Vincent. How's it going?
It's going okay. It's going okay. I'm surprisingly nervous to be sitting here because I'm so used to being on the other side of the stage.
Okay, all right, but I will just say that I believe you have been involved at Fourth Line Theatre, unless I am wrong, for 28 years. 1995, Winslow's Dairy Board?
Yep.
Yeah, so tell us, so you were an actor then?
I was an extra. I was a horseback riding.
Well, I was an extra that year too, but I would say we were both actors. So you were the goddess of the horse.
I was Mockery the horse goddess.
Yeah,
and
so you were
delivered
acting.
Matt Gilbert and Ryan Kerr to their deaths.
On horse?
On horse.
Yeah, okay, so that was your first year at Fourth Line, right? And then, since then, so you've been an actor.
Well, and also, I saw the very first dress rehearsal of the very first Cavan Blazers.
Really?
I did, which you were in.
Yes, I was.
And I remembered, I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's a scene at the end of the show that in that very first season was being done for the first time with live flame and running horses and people having to run from them. And I saw your face, and it was the first time anybody had this happening to them. And your face was very convincing. The fear was palpable.
Oh, that's
Everybody was running madly from the galloping horses.
Right. Well, you're going to see something about that tonight, so that's hilarious that you say that. But out here, I mean, we'll talk about your larger career, but out at Fourth Line, you have been an actor, a production manager, a set designer, a sound designer, a stage manager.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything that you have been?
I think that's it.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Okay, so let's just talk about how did you find us? How did we find you? Do you remember? All those many years ago?
All those many years ago. Well, I was part of the Union Theatre, which was a small black box lab theatre in Peterborough, which you were also involved with, which Rob Winslow was also very much involved with, kind of one of the founding contributors to the existence of the Union. So when he had the opportunity to create Fourth Line, many people from the Union just transplanted themselves out here to make theatre. And I was a little bit slow on the uptake of that because I had other work to do and was running a business and stuff, so I wasn't able to actually act in any of the shows, but until Winslow was a Dairy Board. That's when I came out to ride horses.
And did you grow up as a horsewoman? Am I right about that?
I did. According to my mom, I basically came out of the womb asking where the horses were.
Okay. You're a visual artist as well, right?
Yeah.
And so when you think of yourself, Esther, because you're also a novelist and a playwright.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I should just make the list. What don't you do?
I can't play guitar or sing.
Oh, okay, all right. But when you think of yourself, or you were to introduce yourself to someone, what do you call yourself first and foremost? Or how do you think of yourself first?
It always depends on the context. Usually I just say I do whatever pays.
Oh, and you're a photographer too? Oh my God, you're a photographer as well.
Yeah.
Which one? But like, when you, like in your soul, which is the one or two?
I am very distractible and get bored very easily, so there is no one. I mean, like I do a lot of different things just sort of to keep myself entertained. And at any given time, one thing will take precedence, but then it sort of falls away into the background because I get bored of it, and then I move on to something else.
Right.
So yeah, like my photography career spanned about 8 years, sort of overlapping with stuff. The writing is something I've been focusing on a lot recently. Previous to that, I've been painting or acting or playwriting or running a business. So it just is whatever I can manage to make my brain focus on.
For the jack of all trades that you are, what kind of a degree diploma do you have for that? Or what kind of schooling do you have for this?
I have an honors BA in anthropology and cultural studies.
Okay, now that kind of makes sense. At Trent?
From Trent.
So you were born in the London area,
I was born in London, Ontario, and left there to go to Trent, and I thought I would do my 4 years in 4 and go off to somewhere else and do a master's or whatever, and got to Trent, and in my 3rd year the Union Theatre opened up, and I managed to make it through the last of my 3rd year and my 4th year and not just quit completely because I was so involved in it.
It was a pretty great place.
Yeah.
And so, of late, I mean, 2021, you stage managed the Veranda Society very kindly. You did us a solid there.
That was a beautiful show.
It was a beautiful show. We had a lot of fun on that. But you have done a lot of set design for us of late, and I think you came back to us after years away with sound design to start with. Would that be right? Or was it set design first?
It was the Shadow Walk was the first thing that brought me back. Because I'd been working with Dust Dances as their touring production manager, and Dust Dances is a dance company in Toronto that tours and puts dance performances, several dance performances on in parks. And you were looking for somebody who could help shadow walk move through Millbrook. And you got in touch with me and you said, hey, what about this? And I went, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I recall. And then it was like, what did I bite off? That was a big show.
Yeah, it was a lot. But I mean, compared to touring for 8 weeks all over Ontario and Quebec and Vancouver with a truckload of a literal metric ton of gear that I'd have to move twice a day every day, Shadow Walk was complicated, and I can't really say it was easy, but it was comparatively easy.
Okay, fair enough. There, I can remove the guilt from that. Lots of guilt I can keep on. Let me ask you about sound design first, and we'll go on to set design. What does sound design mean? What does that mean for? What is the requirements here and in other places when you've done sound design?
I guess it depends a lot on context. It depends on what the show needs. Sound design can be as simple as just making sure that there's equipment to play the sound through, because everybody shows up with their music tracks, say for example for dance. Sometimes people just come with their pre-recorded tracks, and it can get as complicated as okay, we're going to do a show with a live band, and we need to mix the band, which means also getting together all that equipment. But if it's pre-recorded, so a lot of what I end up doing for here is sound effects or backing tracks, which I didn't do this year. I opted not to use any canned sound because I always think it's so much better out here if it's not canned through the speaker to speak. And Justin does such a brilliant job of Foley, which is the word used for making sound effects using
like you would pour water from one cup to another, and that would be a waterfall.
Sound of a waterfall or whatever. And so he does such a beautiful job of it. And because of the setting of this particular show and it being modern, I just sort of thought, wouldn't it be fun to just have Justin do all this stuff? And I guess that my biggest contribution to that was the glass breaking. Did it end up working for every single show? Do you know?
I think so. No, the glass breaking? Yeah, totally worked. So it was great.
So I ended up making a box with a spike in it, and so Justin had a little microphone in front of him, and he'd actually just smash a piece of glass into the microphone.
Oh, it wasn't a can sound?
No.
Oh, I had no idea.
I don't
know if anyone remembers in Tilco, if anybody saw Tilco, where they throw the bricks through the window. That's what Esther's talking about.
Yeah, he was actually smashing a piece of glass to make that glass sound
hilarious. I knew there was a lot of him in that barn.
Yes.
Playing.
Doing lots of things and playing radios and making all sorts of wacky sounds. So
we've done things like train effects and things like that, and storms and things. So, and you find those online.
Yeah, I generally tend to find them online, or I make them. I have a little field recorder so I can record stuff, and there are some very specialized microphones and things for field recording that either pencil microphones would pick up the sound of somebody using their phone and not any of the rest of this. So I have done some field recording, and I have done some for I think it was Who Killed Snow White. I came and recorded a scene and the sound effect of people running and pushing and stuff, and then I got some of the cast to yell some of the lines.
That's right.
And recorded that and blended those together. There was one last year that had a judge who was supposed to sound all
was that kind of otherworldly
So I got all the actors who were playing that particular scene, I got them to say their lines, then whisper their lines, and then yell their lines, and then I took that home and blended those three together with different levels and different effects on them, so it sounded like running from the depths of hell.
Right, in which she'll sing. Yeah. That's right. And so, are you quite tech savvy then? Like, you know how to use a lot of different programs. Have you always been on the cusp of computers, or how did you learn all that?
My first experience using computers was when I was in grade 7 or 8, so it would have been about 1980, and my amazing teacher, Miss Finch, brought in an Apple Pet. And so I learned to program BASIC when the stuff was stored on audio cassette.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never even heard of Apple Pet. That's fascinating to me. Okay.
That was Apple before Macintosh.
Wow.
Yeah, before Mac.
So you've been on the cusp, that's how many years is that? Is that 43 years?
Yeah, probably.
Good heavens.
I took the first computer science course in my high school.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was taught by the music teacher who was reading the textbook the night before to teach us the next day because it was so brand new.
Wow. That's really, really cool. And so, what have sort of been some of the bigger challenges with sound design out here on the shows you've worked on?
This is a really hard place to do really good quality sound. Like I know, I've been often frustrated by the backing tracks. We want to say like the sound of a harbor. And it's really hard to get that sound loud enough that the audience can hear it, but quiet enough that everybody can hear the actors over it. So I often have a little temper tantrum, just cut it, forget it, it's terrible.
I liked your harbor sounds in Wishful Seeing
Well,
last year, but it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, and it sounded really good backstage. By the way, like the actors backstage loved it because it put them right in the mood. They'd come out and they're like, they could hear the seagulls and the water lapping and the distant foghorns, and nobody in the audience could hear them.
Right.
So
you could hear a little bit of the seagulls. But what's the challenge with that? Like, because the same thing actually with the pre-show and the intermission music in this show, because I curated some pre-show and intermission and post-show music, and it's beautifully hot backstage.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of the problem, not problem, it's a challenge, right? Yeah. Because this place is so beautiful and it's so open. And anytime you take sound outside, you really have to blast it. But because most of these shows take place long before the modern speaker was invented, we don't want to have speakers on stage where they're obvious. We don't want to have those great big Marshall stacks that they use for great big bands, because that's what you need for somebody 200 feet away or even 100 feet away to be able to hear. Like with Dust Dances, we have great big speakers on these great big stands.
Right.
Pretty much almost in everybody's faces, and there were still days that people couldn't hear because of the wind. So the wind, the space, the air, the speakers are inside the barns, cleverly hidden by the barn boards. So at least half the sound bounces off the soundboards and goes back to the cast.
Right, okay.
So that makes it really hard. It's really hard to get a stereo effect when you can't put the speakers beside the audience. And because the audience is a bit of a wraparound, it's trying to get the sound over here and over here, and then you completely lose your stereo effect, because usually, like, if I was wanting a stereo effect, I'd want the speakers pointing this way. But instead, they're pointing away from it. So everybody's sort of getting left all right. So when I'm trying to make a train go across the stage, it's a real challenge trying to get it to go from one speaker to another to make it sound like it's going across the field.
I thought you did a nice job in Wishful Seeing with it.
Yeah, and it took a few tries, and I think it ended up working really well. And I have sort of at times, because there is a speaker in this barn that faces straight out that way, sometimes I try to design something that's going to get the sound far enough to bounce off the trees.
Oh, really?
So if I can get a fairly high-pitched sound, I can send it far enough that it'll bounce off the trees and come back and sound like it's going to come over there. I've done that, I think, with a dog bark or something like that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And does the audience, do the bodies absorb the sound as well once you get it a full house?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's it.
Why do bodies absorb sound?
Well, because we're soft, and we're wearing fabric. If we were all wearing armor, we would not absorb the sound. So the sound comes and hits your body and just basically sort of falls into your clothing, and it doesn't bounce back again. And of course, it can't pass you. So the sound just hits everybody and then deadens. Yeah. So that's why the front row is going to hear better than the back row, unless you have the speakers coming down this way, and then everybody hears the same volume. So yeah, bodies are a real challenge, and even in indoor theaters, even in beautiful orchestral symphony halls, they've got baffles and reflectors and all these kinds of things in the ceiling that help the sound bounce and come down to the audience in a way that they want it to. And it's like the words are hot or live, deadened or dull, quiet, and so you're trying to get that balance in any given circumstance of where the sound goes, what volume it's at, whether or not there's interference or that kind of thing. So this place has everything that is a challenge in making sound.
Good to know, good to know. I am not surprised that you say this. So I want to set sound aside for a second. Well, I guess I'll ask you about sound. So you create something called tracks. It would be like if you were creating a playlist of the sounds, right? And they have to be on a certain software and on a computer. Is that what happens with sound effects?
Well, it depends on, it depends on the context. I mean, out here usually there's a free online program called Multiplay. And it's sort of a down and dirty cheap version of what the big professional one, QLab.
QLab, okay.
QLab is very expensive, and you have to license it. And it's for something like this, it's a bit of hitting a fly with a sledgehammer, because it can do video, and it can do video online, like on the fly editing. It can bring in all sorts of tracks. You can mix your orchestra through it while you're doing video and sound effects, and then you can also program it so you press a button and it runs everything.
Right.
Multiplay does not do that. Multiplay, you just put the tracks in, you set the volume, you set the length, and then you just hit the go button so that the track happens when the stage manager hits the button. You can program it to run. Like if we knew the first sound cue was at 1 minute and the next sound cue was at 10 minutes, you could set it up so you press the button, the first sound cue happens, and then at 10 minutes the second automatically by the computer. But because this place is so live and anything can happen, we don't want to constrain the actors to like, if you don't hit that 10-minute mark, it's going to sound like the bomb went off and everybody's still standing around.
Yeah, fair enough. And most theaters like that, right?
Yeah,
with your sound cues, you're going to hit each one is going to have to be a go from...
Yeah, absolutely. Except when you get to things like Phantom and a lot of those long run, like Broadway and big shows, those things are timed to the second.
Right.
And the actors learn to make their moves so that they are within the construct of the lights and the sound, which all operate on computer. Right. And the stage manager's there, and they have a stop button in front of them, so the show just runs. And if something goes weird, somebody trips on stage or gets lost, they stop.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then when the show gets back, and they have to they're on their stopwatch, and they're like, okay, where are we? Oh, okay, we have to skip that. And then go, and then it just continues to run. So those shows are super computerized.
Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you. Now, tell me a bit about how, for both sound and then we'll move into set design, how you work with the script and the director to create your designs.
That's part of my favorite part of the process, is coming up with the ideas and finding out what people want. And so usually I will take the script, I'll give it a read, just a straight read with a little pen, and I'll just try to highlight anything that looks like it might be a sound effect or a set piece or whatever. And then I'll give it a really thorough read, and I'll start making notes about, this sounds like it might be a sound effect, this might be a prop, this might be a whatever. And then I'll send that list to the director, stage manager, and say, am I missing anything? Let me know, is this too much, do you want less? And then it's a phone call or a meeting of some kind, and we chat about, like, do you want the train to be a short train, a long train, a loud train, a quiet train? Is it going over a bridge? Is it going on a road? Is it what?
It's that specific.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it has to be that specific, because this is one of the things about sound effects, especially, is that if something sounds off, people don't necessarily notice that it sounds off. They just stop believing the scene.
Right. Yeah.
So that's one of the things where the sound effects have to be really, really as precise as possible.
Sure. And then tell me about designing sets out here. So you did Tilco, you did The Great Shadow last year, you did Bloom, yes,
Carmel. Jeepers, Carmel. Is that it?
We'll start with those.
Yeah, I do think that Carmel was the first set I designed out here.
Did you not do Bloom?
And then Bloom. Which one was first that season?
Bloom was first. Bloom and then Carmel. Okay. So you did both sets that year.
Yeah.
The year before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So tell me about designing sets. Like what is involved in that in terms of what an audience sees?
Well, basically, you're trying to make the area that the actors are performing in look like the place they're supposed to be existing in the magic world of the show, without interfering with their ability to do their job of telling the story, and without overshadowing things, without getting in the way. At least for me, that's yeah. I like to have my set be fairly subtle and fairly minimalist out here, because this place is so beautiful. I don't want the set to be like interfering with people's enjoyment of what's happening on stage.
Right. And so do you draw? Do you make maquettes? I mean, like little scale?
I've never actually made a maquette for out here. I have been tempted to a number of times, but I've never gotten around to it. So I tend to do a drawing, and several drawings for set pieces especially. And then I have a computer program that I work in, like it's between Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. I don't use CAD, mostly
because we've taken your stuff to CAD, like to do CAD to get
to make
the
sure that
dimensions and size.
And that's it. So I can get only so precise in Illustrator, and then it has to be translated into something that the carpenter can use. And so I don't do the carpentry myself because I don't have a carpentry ticket. So I don't want to be in a position where I'm building something and
that thousands of pounds have to stand upon.
I don't want to be responsible for breaking someone's leg. So that's
good base level.
Yeah. So then my designs go off to be certified. They're not really certified, but they're certified level so that the carpenter can actually do everything by measurement and make sure everything's safe. And anything over 6 feet has different railing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So those are the rules that I know and adhere to, but I do not do the work myself.
So with something like Tilco, which, and many plays out here, and I think everywhere, has multiple locations, right? So how do you tackle that, or how did you tackle that in Tilco?
It's a super big challenge, and I had a bunch of different ideas before we started working on Tilco, and those ideas changed several times over the course of Tilco. And it happened primarily in the factory floor and in a diner. And then there were some other scenes that happened other places. So I had made these modular tables that could be flipped around and turned, and
They're right behind us, right there. The modular tables. They're leaning against the production building.
Yes. Well, one of them is a modular table, and two of them are factory tables.
Yeah.
And so they were made to open up and close, and they were going to be diner table, kitchen table, all this other stuff. But then, as the show wore on, because the scene changes were so quick, there wasn't enough time to change anything. So the set ended up getting reduced to the factory and the diner. And the tables did get opened up and closed a couple of times.
They were also, you had the diner, you had the
fancy restaurants.
Yeah, and then what is it called? The lunchroom at the factory, right?
Yes, yeah. And so the tables would get opened up for the lunchroom and closed for the restaurant. And then the diner, and the diner table had a front that flipped down that had the diner logo, and then it would flip back up again when it was, and the table would close down to become a restaurant table or a kitchen table or whatever. So I had all these grand plans for these super modular tables, and the set had all these little things, because it was factory too, so the idea was to try to make the set like a factory, working parts, and people going, moving stuff in unison. And there was just not enough time in the set changes and that show. It was a fast-moving show. Everybody wanted it to keep moving along. So I ditched all of those ideas, along with the director. We just was like, nah, we're just going to have some...
You had elements of it. You had elements of it, right?
Yeah. And I'm very proud of the diner tables, because they're all paint and wood, and they look beautifully like 1940s, 50s Formica.
Yeah, like the metal, looks like
with
metal.
With the metal rim and the beautiful Formica type.
Yeah.
It's like 8 layers of gloss paint. So many different layers of paint.
That's awesome. Compared to something like Carmel, which it was sort of like you created a shell or an essence of a house, a farmhouse.
The inside-out house, because so much of the show happened inside a house, but also right on the front porch. I didn't want to just make an open house and a front porch with nothing there, and because it was kind of like it was a memory play, and it kind of moved through time a little bit. So I wanted to create a set that gave it that kind of mystical, magical memory feeling. So I made the outline of a house with a wall that only came up about this high. So it was like wood siding with sort of that like wall represented here curved line that you see in architectural drawings. So I basically did an architectural representation of a house with a working door and like magnets so they could hang signs on it, so the house would become I can't remember what else it became. At one point it was a hall or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, that was I was actually really pleased with that set, even though it was super minimal. And of course, if I'd had so much more time, I would have done a lot more sort of that kind of fun, hinty stuff. But it did the trick.
And tell me, what was it? How was it different or the same as what you did for Bloom?
Well, Bloom was a rock and roll show, and you were directing it, and we agreed that we wanted a proper rock and roll stage. So having toured with a number of different companies and stuff, including rock and roll bands, I just said, well, why don't we just order a proper rock and roll stage?
And that's what we did, right?
And that's what we did.
We had towers, and we had, I just saw the fake park cans, the fake lights that we hung.
And those are actually real park cans, but they don't.
Yeah,
so park can is a light, it's like a giant soup can, and you put a light bulb in it, and it just shines light straight out. And so those are actually real park can shells, they just don't have any instruments.
No innards.
No innards, no lighting, no.
And then I think we also bought some of those black, I think we got them on Marketplace, Facebook, but those black chests that rock bands store all their gear in, those big black metal chests.
Yeah, that actually I think came with the hard case, the hard shell case.
Yeah.
Came with the stage that we bought because it held all the legs and everything.
Right.
So
I know we bought a few more too.
Yes.
And so tell me with a set like that, because again, multiple locations over decades, right?
Yeah.
How do you do a rock and roll stage, but then represent all those other places? A kitchen of this person's, or outside of this place, or all the a car, the van, the traveling van.
Yes. I guess that's definitely working with the director and coming up with creative solutions. So it doesn't mean moving the actors to a different part of the playing area, and then this represents the kitchen, or like, somebody wheels out a kitchen table, now it's a kitchen, and then the table goes away. The staging of the van, I think that was your idea, of just having everybody sit, but then finding a steering wheel for them to use.
I do love a bit of luggage and a steering wheel, I must say.
Yeah.
And sometimes I like real vehicles, and I think Carmel had real vehicles, right?
Carmel had a real
truck,
vehicle,
yeah.
which we'll see in it.
No, it's supposed to have horses. We should.
No. But what was the one before? Oh no, the Hollywood one.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Great Shadow had a real vehicle.
Great Shadow had a real
Yes, it
vehicle.
did.
So yeah, I mean, and a lot of it, of course, we have faith in the audience to have an imagination. So there's a lot of hinting going on, or like the Tilco car, which is a repeat of the Bad Luck Bank Robbers car. And it's goofy. It's a big styrofoam car, and everybody runs on with it. It's like, and we just trusted you guys are going to go with us and be like, yes, we love the car. That's great. We know what was happening in that scene.
And that's part of it. Is it the getting the audience to just suspend their disbelief, as well as creating some magical touches so they'll go along with you? Like, where's the balance of that?
Hard to find.
Okay.
I think it really is. It's watching through the scenes and trying to see, like, is there enough of a hint of what's going on here that the audience will get it, especially enough that it's not going to interfere with the story while they're trying to figure out what the heck is that thing they're holding, or is that really a car, or like, if you have a goofy car in a serious scene, you're going to create, insert comedy into
a different kind of tension, I suppose, or a different kind of incongruity.
That's it. You're just really trying to be sensitive to the show and what the show needs and what the storytelling, like, it's all about the storytelling and the set and the sound and the lights and all that stuff. That's the magic. They got magic that helps elevate the story from the page and the actor's voice into the realm of believability. But the work is in the actors. They're the ones who are telling the story. So everything around that is just there to enhance the work.
Right. And so is it all done sort of on first day of rehearsal? You give drawings in, you give CAD plans, and then you're done? Or how does it work as a set designer?
It depends on the context. Out here, I usually get in touch with the director sort of over the course of the winter. We start talking, we go back and forth about ideas, then eventually start to work on drawings. There's a bit of a budget a budget concern, so we have to make sure everything's going to fit within the budget, so then everything has to get approved there. And then usually it's a week or two before the show starts. The set begins to be built. And this year I was fortunately really successful. We had the Tilco set down and the actors to rehearse on it, which is not always possible because sometimes materials are hard to source. And especially in previous years when I was also on tour, I wasn't around to do the work. So this year I was there and available, and we got going right away. The Tilco set went down, and the carpenter had the tables built. And so then it was just a matter of me making sure everything was working and coming in and sitting on scenes, and does that table work that way? And so before I did any painting or anything, I want to make sure everything works. So then I'm here usually, at least for the first couple of weeks of rehearsal, often right up to opening night, depending on, and then especially when it comes to props, we'll have rehearsal props, so people will be using things that look like or stand in for the things that would actually be props.
So like a modern broom, but eventually you'll get a broom of the period.
Yeah. They're using a McDonald's mug, and eventually we're going to get them the gold chalice or whatever. So that is a process that happens over the course of the rehearsals, because especially out here, a lot of these shows are premieres.
Yeah.
So there isn't a lot of history with the props and the set. So it's not like, okay, well, every time we've done this show, we use this. It's like, okay, well, how does this scene work? So sometimes scenes get cut, lengthened, shortened, actors get added or removed. It's sometimes a nightmare for costume because they suddenly have to make 10 more costumes because they've got a new crowd scene. Yeah. Or they spent, 3 weeks making, or one of us has spent 3 weeks making something that we're so proud of and so beautiful, and the scene's cut. Yeah. So you can't be precious about it either. You just have to, nope. You do what the show needs.
Right. I'm mindful of your time and everyone's time, and I've got my next guest soon, but I'm so grateful that you came and joined me and talked about, sort of unloaded your brain around sets and sound. I could have talked to you for hours more. I just want to say also, I think it's okay to say what you're working on right now. You're writing a dystopian science fiction sort of set in Peterborough?
Yeah, it's actually not so dystopian. It's a utopian science fiction novel set in Peterborough in 2078.
It's exciting. I've heard little tiny bits of it in some of the writing, the COVID writing stuff.
I just finished the third draft. It is a post-plague novel. I started it long before COVID, and in March 2020, I woke up in chapter 3. I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow.
And since then, so much of my novel has come true that by the time it's published, it's going to be historical fiction. But
isn't that amazing? Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So right now, so I've got the third draft out with some of my readers to give me some feedback, and my next step will be shilling it out to publishers.
Okay, well, fingers crossed on your shilling.
Yes.
And would you all join me in thanking Esther Vincent?